this is a wonderful workshop called Resilient. Well, let's see if it's wonderful, hopefully. But it's a workshop on resilient community energy. And it's one of the events that belongs to the CESET project. And CESET is a 4-year project funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund, which doesn't exist anymore, but has many inheritors like the Arton Fund. And it's a project about community energy and sustainable energy transitions in Ethiopia, Malawi, and Mozambique. And the project is now concluded. In fact, it concluded in September. So this workshop really tries to bring some of the insights that we had during the project. And also it's hosted by Loughborough University, which has been one of the hosts of CESET. And thank you very much to Harshit and to all the team, all the people in Loughborough for organizing the workshop. And really the question here that occupies ourselves today is how do we realize resilient community energy systems? And when we talk about community energy systems, resilience, we have to think both about the resilience of the systems, of the technology, of the networks, but also about the resilience of the community. And as disasters and other challenges become a kind of normal part of everyday life, is even more important to think about resilience. So in this case, we are interested in bringing the concerns of SDG 7, the Sustainable Development Goal 7, which is on providing universal energy access, into dialogue with Sustainable Development Goal 11, which is the city's goal, but as you know, is to keep cities safe, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive. And also with the Sustainable Development Goal 13, which emphasizes the need to promote climate action. So what we want to do, we want to facilitate a kind of a dynamic discussion. So we are going to have 3 short presentations, around 15 minutes each. The first one is going to be by Harshit Vallecha and Mulualem Gebreselassie from Loughborough University and Sheffield Hallam University, respectively. But also Mulualem with strong connections with Mekelle University in Ethiopia. And they're both members of the project CESET on community energy. And they are going to talk about how it is possible to then realize resilient community energy systems based on their common research in both Malawi and Ethiopia. Then, since I'm chairing, because Jacob couldn't join us, unfortunately, I'll give a place to the second presentation from our dear colleague Joyce Chibunga, and on really the creation of robust systems for community energy. So and particularly focus on Malawi's power sector. So we are looking forward to listen to your presentation, Joyce, and then I will do the third presentation. Perhaps I'll try to be briefer, but I will be talking about energy justice, gender, inclusion, and intersectionality, and what that means for community energy. And after the 3 short presentations, we hope we can foster a debate. And in the program, we have the names of the speakers. Really, this debate is a moment in which we would really like to have multiple perspectives from the audience as well. So our question is, how can we build resilient community energy systems in practice? Sorry, the 4 words start to kind of get confused in my mind. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the word to my colleagues, Harshit and Mulualem, to start with the first presentation. So you have 15 minutes. Oh, don't you love it when this fractal image emerges here?
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm just plugging in my real presentation for presenting the session. So yeah, just bear with me for a second here. Hi everyone. Can you see my presentation? Can anyone confirm?
Yes, we see it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, all right. Hi everyone. My name is Harshit Vallecha. I'm a visiting fellow at Steer Center, Loughborough University. So I will be presenting this session with my colleague, Dr. Mulyalam Jabraslesi, who is Associate Professor at Sheffield Hallam University. And in this session, we are going to present our reflections from our work in Malawi and Ethiopia about investigating how we can realize a resilient community energy systems. So first of all, to begin with, I would like to explain in brief about what do we mean by the resilient community energy systems. So in simple terms, the resilient community energy systems are the decentralized and community-centric renewable energy initiatives, which has the inherent capacity to withstand any unforeseen natural hazards like lightning strikes or earthquakes and climate change induced risks such as floods, hurricanes, and socio-political disruptions such as civil wars and armed conflicts. So why we are talking about these systems? Because these systems are particularly relevant with respect to providing last mile energy access for underserved and vulnerable population residing in the risk-prone regions, especially in the countries of developing Asia, as well as in sub-Saharan Africa. And also such systems prove to be instrumental in providing in building the resilience of the community against any unforeseen events or disruptions. And these systems are particularly relevant in driving the global agenda of low carbon transition for the climate action. So the pertinent question about the resilient community energy systems is that what determines the resilience of the community energy systems? So since community energy systems involve active participation of the community in one or more stages of the project implementation, so the resilience of the community energy systems actually depends on the resilience of the community. And resilience of the community could be assessed through the community's capacity in the form of human, social, economic, and physical capital. So human capital is basically the education and training and skills possessed by the community members. It also includes the workforce ability as well as the health of the population. Social capital is the indicator of the degree of connectedness or cooperation among the community members, which enables them their group decision ability. And economic capital is actually the indicator of income savings, availability of credits, and businesses in the particular locality. While physical capital involves the physical infrastructures like electricity or communication infrastructure or transportation facilities within a community setting. So all these forms of communities capital actually enables the community to absorb any severities of any unforeseen disruption and to recover back to its original state with an adaptive capacity. So resilience of a community energy system actually can be realized by strengthening the resilience of the community. And resilience of the community could be achieved by developing the community's capital. Now the question is, how can we develop the community's capital to realize the resilient community energy system? So interestingly, there exists a close interrelationship between the stages of community energy project implementation as well as the development of communities capital. So typically, the implementation of a community energy project involves planning, installation, and operation stages for their realization. And the involvement of community during these stages actually build these forms of communities capital, which actually makes the community resilient against any unforeseen events or disruption. So this could be explained by one of our examples from the case of Chipopoma micro hydro energy system, which is in the Malawi. So we have carried out the visit of this particular project and developed one of the case studies for our papers. So Chipopoma is actually the name of the waterfall, which is located in the Livingstonia town in the Rumpi district of Malawi. And people of Chipopoma developed this idea of establishing a micro hydro energy system by utilizing a natural water stream in their region, and they form a network of volunteers among them and apply for the funding to the international development organizations to develop this project. So the people over there successfully secured the funding from the development organizations like UNDP and others. And UNDP not only provides them the funding for the powerhouse development as well as the mini grid development, but they also provide them the technical training so that they can build this entire system by their own. So this system comes in operation in 2019, and as of now, around 120 houses have been electrified to the systems, and it also connected some of the public buildings like schools, travel lodge, and also providing the electricity to the livelihood generation activities like maize mill or bread making over there. So this story of the community energy system of Chipokoma, as apparent from here, was not that much smooth as it is shown over here. The project actually encounters so many unforeseen events or disruptions. So one of the incidents of the unforeseen disruption was the incidence of lightning strike, which happened in 2021, which damaged one of the transformers of the system over there, which affect the energy system services at a great extent. So the people of the Chipopoma and the village energy committee over there managed this disruption by replacing this faulty transformer through a new one. They again arranged some additional funding from the development agency and successfully replaced this transformer. Similarly, they encountered some other issues like the damage of their turbine when there was the issue of phase imbalancing because some of the houses connected the energy intensive appliances, which causes the huge wear and tear in their turbine. And to manage that disruption, the community actually install some protection devices like surge arresters and current limiters to the houses so that they can operate the plant at a reduced capacity but for a longer duration. So if we look around the response of the community to such kind of unforeseen disruption, we found that the human capital of the community developed in the form of their training and skills imparted by the UNDP at the time of installation and operation, and the other organizations as well who imparted the technical training to the community, and the funding acquisition skills to the community actually helped them to manage this disruption. Similarly, the other forms of communities capital like economic capital, physical capital, and social capital developed during the implementation phase actually contributes in building the overall resilience of the community so they can withstand such kind of unforeseen disruptions and make the system operative in a long run. So this interrelationship between the development of communities capital with the implementation of a community energy project could be further elaborated by taking one more example, which is the case of Mediaca, a solar wind hybrid system, which is again in the Malawi. So Mediaca is a small town in the Enketa Bay district of northern Malawi, and Department of Energy, Government of Malawi took the initiative to install a solar wind hybrid system in this town to electrify some of the households over there. So they installed a power plant in 2009 and extend the mini grid to around 150 households, which were located in the 1 kilometer radius of the powerhouse. So this system was actually developed with the help of the Department of Energy, but there was no involvement of the community in the implementation of this system. So this energy system worked well for a few years, but encountered a major disruption in 2013 when one of the incidents of lightning strikes damaged one of the wind turbine and also damaged uh, some of the important equipments in the powerhouse, making the system inoperative after that disruption. So, since the community was not involved in this project implementation stage, so they were not having the capacity to revive the system by their own, and they just waited for the intervention of the Department of Energy people for the recovery of the system. But not much happened to the DOE officials for recovering that system over the period of time, and this damaged infrastructure was still lying abandoned over there when we visited this site in 2023. So if we analyze the forms of communities capital that has been affected during the implementation of this particular project, we found that there was not having much significant improvement in the human, economic, and physical capital of the community during the implementation of this project. Instead, there was a negative impact on the social capital of the community during the installation of the project because the project has not included all the villagers for providing the electricity connection. They just provided the electricity connection to 150 households, and the inclusion criteria for selecting those households was not developed by consulting the local community over there. So this brings a sense of discrimination among the community members, which actually reduced the resilience of the community and had a negative impact on the resilience of the community to withstand such kind of unforeseen disruption and making the system operative by their own. So from now onwards, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Mulyalam, to explain this case and rest of the slides. Mulyalam, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Harshit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning. My name is Mulyalam. I'm currently working at Sheffield Hallam University as an associate professor. I'm also an expert on energy and a member of the CESET project. So the third example that we have seen as an evidence for our argument of the building of community in systems or resilience of community energy systems and the communities themselves is a solar water pumping system. And the solar water pumping system was developed by World Vision, and it has a capacity of 2 kilowatts. And currently it serves around 55 households. So it is solely working for water pumping and is providing in water systems for the communities. So it starts in 2020 and it goes live in operation in 2022. And then we have got a political problem in Ethiopia, and then there was a destruction of this system and including theft, and it stops operation late 2022. Then the community do not have the capacity to restore the energy system by themselves, so they have to solicit other institutions, and they have used their own capability and networking that they developed during the initial phase, and then they request the World Vision again to restore the system back. And so World Vision again restored the system. They funded it by themselves, and then the system is now operational. So in this point, you can put it next. So in this point, we can see that the communities themselves do not have the capacity to restore the systems themselves because they don't have the finances, they don't have any emergency funding to restore the systems, and it was in operation for a very short time, so they cannot generate themselves enough income to restore the system. So they have to solicit funding from World Vision again, but still they have used their capacity or the social capital that they developed in order to solicit again get the system back. Now all of them are in operation, in 100% operation, and so they are contributing in terms of economic capital, especially for the women and children that they were fetching a long distance. They are relived and they are working and contributing to other economic activities, and they have the physical capital as well. In this one, we only see physical capital in terms of water pumping, but this one doesn't have any additional capital or physical capitals like telecoms and the like that are generated because of the availability of electricity, because it only works for water pumping. And the human capital is well developed, and they are very trained in how to plan on how to operate the system right now. So this system is working perfectly, and they have positive contributions to all the human capital that we can see. And in return, they are contributing into the resilience of the system themselves. Next. So as a comparison, as Harshit said, and I indicated for the solar one, we can see that most of the systems that are operational have positive contributions into the community capital in four of them. But if the systems are dysfunctional, then you can see the impact that you see in the case of this solar and wind hybrid system, because it's not functional. It has worked for a short period of time, and then as Harshit said, it's not functional now. And so they have more of a negative impact, particularly on the social side of it, because if the communities are not believing in on the system, and if they are being affected, and then there is a distraction on their confidence on the system, which negatively affects us. And on the other, still, it is not a significant contribution. So one thing that we can see here is that the nature of the cause of disruptions is different from system to system. So you can see the first one in Chipopoma, they have the natural hazard and technical failures. And in the hybrid system, you have the natural hazard. And in the case of Ethiopia, we have the socio-political impact. So there is no way of one-size-fits solution for every cause of the disruptions. What we need to do is we have to develop solutions that are context relevant and specific to each of the issues that we can see. That's what we can learn when we compare the impact on the development of the community capital, as well as the development of resilience on the community energy systems themselves. Next. So as a summary, we can see that we have the community energy systems project life cycle, which starts from planning out operation and in some cases upgrading of the systems. And within that, we have a lot of issues that we can consider that contributes to the community resilience. So in this case, I will just focus on 4 key areas. One is the mobilization or community mobilization. So we have seen this in our different researches in different community energy systems, that if there is not a very good community mobilization in the systems during the planning and later stages in the installation and operation, then the confidence of the community and the ownership or the sense of developing ownership by the community always fails. And that leads to the failure of the contribution to the human capital as well as social capital. At the same time, it affects the resilience of the community energy systems. So it is very, very important for developing community mobilization and group decision-making systems where you can select representative members from each of the communities that are represented well in each of the communities, and that can give confidence and sense of ownership for the communities to develop their own capacity in order to respond to any disruptions. And that will help in turn to support the resilience of community energy systems. The second one that we have learned is on capacity building. So on the capacity building, we can see it in 2 ways. One is the technical capacity of the people and the community themselves. So everybody shouldn't get the trainings, but some members of the community should get a training, especially on operation and maintenance of the community systems. And in our assessments, we have seen that because of the lack of simple maintenance skills by the communities fail. And they don't have that service provision for the communities, and that affects again back into the community's confidence in owning the systems. So that is one key area that we can build the capacity of the people, and that contributes to the human capital. And at later stages, we can develop again the soft skills, especially on financial management and on understanding the business models, especially that helps them to accumulate finances in order to respond to any expenses that comes during disruptions. And the soft skill development are very, very important in order to contribute to the human capital. And in return, they help to develop their economic value in terms of money, and that helps them to contribute to the disruptions and to maintain the systems effectively. And the third one is mainly productive use of energy, and that is very, very important in order to use the energy that is available in order to produce goods, in order to get incomes, and that in turn helps to have the contribution to economic capital. And that economic capital or the development of economic capital by itself again feeds in back into for the communities to pay more for the services that they are getting into the system. And that will help again to develop funding for responding to any disruptions during the lifetime of the projects. And the final one is developing infrastructure. And that is part of the operation where you can have electricity supply into opening new telecoms, hospitals, and clinics, and that helps the well-being of the communities. And at the same time, it again helps to develop their economic capital. And all those contributions will feed in again back into developing the resilience community energy systems. So it is more of an interlink between the resilience of community energy systems, at the same time developing the resilience of the communities themselves. And if there is a resilient community, there is the capacity for the communities to develop their own economy and their own well-being, and they can again fit in back into the community energy systems where they can support and sustain the systems by contributing financially and by contributing through their knowledge that acquires during the development of human capital. So those are very complicated and interlinked issues, but they are very, very important in order to help us to develop the resilient community energy systems and contribute to have the African continent, especially to contribute to reducing the energy access that we can see a lot in the continent. So next, I think that's it. Thank you very much, and we will be back next in the panel.
Thank you, Harshit. Thank you, Mulwalem, for that excellent framework and a very fascinating framework about thinking about community resilience holistically, attending at the interrelation between different factors. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the second speaker, Joyce Chibunga, who is currently at the University of Loughborough, but she has a distinguished record, including a Fulbright fellowship that took her to the University of Oklahoma to complete her master's, and now a Commonwealth Scholarship Award. So, Joyce, we are looking forward to hear your presentation, which will focus specifically on Malawi. Are you able to share your slides?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that now.
So I particularly so I will talk a little bit while you. Okay, it seems working now.
It's working.
I was just going to say that I particularly find it fascinating the conceptual distinction between resilience and robustness, and so I think that's really useful. Yeah, you can put it full screen so we can see the full slide.
Okay, can you see that now?
We still needed to see it full screen. So if you press the bottom of the full screen at the bottom of your computer.
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
So, like if you go down where it says display settings, just press because now the presenter view is selected, or the editing view. So you have to select the full screen in your own.
Not in the shared one, but just open the PPT and then you can make it full in that.
In your PowerPoint.
In your PowerPoint.
Yeah, exactly there where you are with the cursor. Yeah, just press that one.
Yes, can you see that now?
No.
No.
Okay, let me go display settings.
No, the other thing you can do is just increase the zoom. So it's not 70%, you can increase it to the maximum.
Oh, everything looks fine from this end.
You can increase the zoom and then we'll see it bigger, the slide, because now it's very small.
Okay.
Yeah, like that.
Okay.
Maybe that's okay. So just make sure you change the slides. I will.
Is that okay now?
Yes, just go ahead and start with the presentation.
Can you see that?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. Is everyone okay?
It's not full screen, but I think it's better if you go ahead with the presentation and you can see it okay.
This is strange.
That's too high because we are not going. We need to see a full slide. So if you put 110 zoom, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Joyce, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. Apologies for that. Thank you all for joining. We'll be talking about lessons that we're drawing from Malawi, and this is looking at the integration of community capacity, policy support, and the energy systems robustness to build resilience. In this presentation, I'll take you through the nature of the problem and the research gap and the importance of this proposed integrated resilience building approach. As I said, that will be drawing from lessons based on a PhD study. And the case studies were conducted to apply the proposed approach, where the resilience assessment of the grid operator was conducted, and the contribution of the national energy policy to support power systems resilience and the capacity of the grid infrastructure to withstand severe disruptions. And later on, I'll just summarize a few resilience enhancement approaches in the interest of time. And
Joyce, I'm not sure if you are changing the slides, so you have to go through the slides.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so maybe tell us the number of the slide and then we can tell you if we can see it. Now we see slide 1.
Yes, I'm on slide 1, the outline.
Okay. No, the slide, the outline is slide 2, I think. So we are in slide 1, the title.
You're still on slide 1. I think we should maybe.
Now we are in the outline. Now it's the outline.
Okay. So then I needed to be using that to move to the slides one by one. So I don't know why you're not able to see that when
No,
you
we see the outline. It's perfect. You just move the slides.
Okay, so anyway, I'll see how I can present with that, because I wanted to present using the full screen so I can transition properly. Yeah, but anyways, so I'll then adapt to the community energy resilience. The problem that I've been looking at is reduced accessibility, reliability, and affordability. As most of you know that these are resilience features, and most of these problems are multidisciplinary. All of these problems are multidisciplinary, ranging from operational challenges, aging infrastructure, governance issues, policy gaps, and exposure to natural disasters. And these have resulted in severe physical damages of the system, vulnerable infrastructure, some reduced economic activities, and frequent system shutdowns. As you see that this problem is complex and multidisciplinary in nature. However, although the problem is multidisciplinary in nature, the existing studies are usually system-centric, only concentrating at the technical side, or organizational and economic. And the challenge with this approach is that the solutions are usually biased and non-inclusive. This is why the context-based socio-technical approach was proposed to ensure that the multidisciplinary challenges are comprehensively resolved. And this context-based solution offers advantages in that, one, it takes care of the locality of resilience challenges, because the resilience are location specific, and then it offers a platform to apply the mixed resilience. This mixed resilience takes into consideration the hard resilience, which is the physical aspects of the resilience features, and then the soft resilience, which includes the human aspects. and it also offers understanding of the resilience by considering the integration of all those issues that surround resilience features. And consequently, the analysis of these complex and multidisciplinary issues require multiple dimensions. In the end, this approach highlights how weaknesses in one dimension can impact others. For example, how policy support influences or shapes the infrastructure robustness and how it enables or it supports the operator response. And I'll move to one of the case studies where I conducted by looking at the grid operator. In this one, we assess the resilience of the grid operator to respond to severe disruptions or multiple disruptions, where the results indicate that the operator did not have the capacity or to prevent or anticipate, absorb, or transform. And most of the issues that were identified were issues to do with disaster preparedness. The plans were not in place, and the infrastructure was vulnerable, and issues to do with weather data, insufficient infrastructure, no redundant lines, which severely impacted the absorptive capacity, and the inadequacy of spares and mechanized equipment to respond to disruptions and damaged infrastructures. And in most importantly, in the transformative indicator, there was compromised institutional independence due to political interferences, and there was no indication of changes in any organizational frameworks to include issues of resilience and disruptions. However, the overall weakness across all these resilience capacities was the access to finance, as the previous presenters highlighted. So this just underscores the need to have the resilience funds. And then we also looked at the policy support, where the results indicate that the national energy policy failed to support infrastructure resilience due to non-implementation of the energy access, energy efficiency, and off-grid targets, which reduced the capacity mix, emergency response, capacity expansion, and diversification. And these are key characteristics in resilience, infrastructure resilience. So the infrastructure resilience was compromised. At the same time, the policy also failed to support institutional resilience due to reduction in governance, enforcement, laws and regulation formulations, and awareness campaigns. And this also reduced the institutional capacity and subsequently compromised institutional resilience. The issues to do with policy implementation, which were identified, were lack of funding, which has been coming out in most of the challenges, lack of funding, lack of policy administration, monitoring, and clear policy targets. There was no coordination with key stakeholders. As such, most of the targets were assumed to be overly ambitious, and some of the key stakeholders were not even aware of what they were supposed to do with what was provided for in the policy. And then the political interference is a big issue, and the lack of statistical energy data, which would inform the policy formulation was also a problem. And then the incapacitation of the Ministry of Energy to champion the policy was also one of the key issues which rendered the policy to fail in supporting the resilience of the power system. Our case study looked at the infrastructure itself, where we used the 2022 tropical cyclone Anna to assess its impact on the infrastructure. And the generation infrastructure was affected, as can be seen in the figure 5, which shows the hydropower plant, the Kapchira hydropower plant, which was completely washed away by the floods, and some of the key transmission infrastructure were also brought down, which resulted in the challenges in power system operation, as can be observed with severe functionality reduction and the extended duration in the degraded state of the power system. In this case, we looked at the power delivery. This active power was not delivered to the grid connected customers, and there was slow recovery or restoration. So these issues arise from those that have been identified in the case study number 1, where we assess the capacity of the grid operator, because the operator is the sole custodian of this infrastructure. So there are issues, there are challenges affected how the power system operated during these disasters. And then putting all these things together, we see that lack of effective policy implementation had an impact on the status of the electricity supply structure, which resulted in that structure system to be hydro-based, non-redundant, vandalized, or have inadequate supply, and that affected the operator response in many aspects. At the same time, the ineffective implementation of the policy influenced or failed to enable the capacity, the grid operator, that institutional independence, that institutional capacity. And an example is the structural rigidities that were observed, the lack of freedoms to handle things without being in the grips of politics or political leadership. However, all these things have been overacted by the financial constraints, because due to financial constraints, the policy could not be effective, could not be implemented, and that affected the capacity of the infrastructure and the operator at the same time. And just as a snapshot, there is a full paper on the resilience, interconnected resilience enhancement. However, in the interest of time, just look at how we can use interconnection of policy, infrastructure robustness, and operator response to respond to the identified resilience challenges. We find that energy infrastructure development shapes or promotes the resilience features, which ensures that the system is less prone to impacts of severe disruptions, giving the operator the ability to respond to these disruptions effectively. At the same time, the policy support influences or bolsters institutional resilience, which also enables the operator to respond effectively. And in all these, the main issue that surrounds the activities of this integrated approach is availability of resilience financing, because it shows that everything is dependent on the availability of finances. For example, how to manage the policy, even if they have to develop redundant transmission lines, or those require financial resources. So I just quickly want to adapt this to this concept of integrated resilience building from power systems to community energy systems. So I had the community energy system, and then there is these regulatory instruments and the communities themselves put together to come up with the most resilient community energy systems, which will be sustainable, inclusive, flexible, and adaptable. And to do this, let's look at the community energy system. How can we enhance it? We can use diversification. We can have redundant systems. We can have backup systems, depending on the type of technology. We can have smart grids and digital tools. And then the regulated support should support equity and inclusivity. It should have supportive policies and incentives, because most times I think the issue of incentives has come out clear as one of the key issues affecting the communities. And then to have policies that strengthen emergency response and recovery. And then there's this community which needs to be strengthened in terms of capacity. We've heard some of the projects which failed because the community lacked the capacity, and then we need to have the community which can foster. We need to foster community engagement and ownership that has a bearing on resilience building. And most importantly, as adapting that concept of integrated power system resilience, financing is key. We've heard from the last presentation that the issues of finance came out as most of the challenges to achieve the resilience building in the communities. Community engagement is key to adapting community energy systems to local needs and challenges, because as the previous presenter said, resilience is not a one size fits all issue. So we need to have the local needs at heart when developing these community energy systems. Would like to give a case study of Bondo mini grid in Malawi to see how these things come out together. So there's this mini grid robustness, and then looking at the regulatory support and the community at the same time. So the mini grid is flood resistant because they learned from the lessons based on the 2015 floods. They built a flood resistant infrastructure such that they were not affected by the recent tropical cyclones. However, they still are unable to buy electricity using mobile phones, so they have to queue like maybe for 24 hours to access the electricity. And then they've done it really well with community. There's people involvement in most everything. They have village electricity committees, which act as a link between the managers, the mini grid managers, and the communities. However, the recent study indicated that there was lack of community capacity, technical capacity to handle issues of technical failures. And in regulatory framework, they are yet to have clear guidelines to access the rural electrification levy, and this has affected the electricity access, because they have failed to connect more customers because of this challenge. So
Joyce, can I ask you to wrap up because we
yes,
need to go?
yes, so we find that it is sustainable, yes, it is flexible, but there's lack of inclusivity because of these issues. And to summarize, the resilience financing is critical in building this resilience, and capacity of these systems depend on not only the infrastructure, but also on the capacity of the communities and system operators, and the capacity of policy and regulatory environment to support resilience activities. Thank you so much for your attention. And
Thank you. If you can stop, thank you. Really important to think about the relationship between policy, operators, and infrastructure. If you could perhaps say, so we keep the comments to the end of the three presentations. I'm going to, since we are very much out of time, I'm going to try to be really brief. Can you stop presenting so I can start the presentation? And but this interaction is really interesting and really important to understand resilience. And so now we are going to, so I hope you are seeing now my screen. Can somebody tell me whether you are seeing it?
Yes, we can see here.
Okay, so now we are going to follow on from these wonderful two presentations from Harshit and Mulualem and Joyce to think about how to build resilience through gender equality and inclusion. And the premise of my presentation is that to build resilience, we have to ensure that every last member of the community, the most vulnerable, is included in any efforts to deliver energy access. And when we think about that, about resilience and community resilience in that way, the main thing that comes to us is these questions of energy justice that increasingly permeate current energy policy. And energy justice is a conception that comes informed by liberal ideas of justice, particularly coming from the Anglophone literature from North America and the UK, and is thought on these three pillars: the need to ensure the distribution of energy resources so that everybody has access, the need to recognize the diversity of needs for energy access, and the need to ensure that everybody participates and is an active participant on the governance of energy. So this is what is considered the dominant kind of paradigm of energy justice. But the problem is that empirical studies of energy justice increasingly suggest that this conception of energy justice is not really appropriate when we are thinking about delivering the Sustainable Development Goal 7, which requires us to engage with contexts in which redistribution is highly unequal and always incomplete, and there's very difficult to achieve justice in that way. Then a lot of the interventions on the energy system are shaped by colonial models of knowledge production that reproduces existing models of thinking about energy justice and doesn't recognize the needs of the local communities. And also, we are seeing that increasingly participatory processes tend to reproduce the very injustices that we see across the energy system. So perhaps this kind of paradigm of energy justice is not the most appropriate to actually build resilience and to build fair energy systems. And this is something that has been really visible in our project CESET on community energy. One place we've been trying to learn a lot is from Black feminism, and particularly from the insights from feminists like Sylvia Tamale and other feminists based in Africa. And some of the insights that we had from this theory is first that we need to recognize that people are at the receiving end of diverse forms of institutional, structural, and cultural discrimination, and that is what shapes how community energy systems become implemented on the ground and how resilient they are. The second insight is that we need to recognize people as active agents that change their own futures, that they can activate the community energy projects. And that's why these notions of social and human capital that Harshit and Mulualem were discussing are so important to think about community energy. And finally, we need to recognize how people are embedded in a specific social and political webs, also very material sometimes, very much related with the relationship with their infrastructures and their environment and their policies, as Joyce's presentation was showing us. So you have to really think about those interactions between infrastructure, operators' actions, and policy. So one of the proposals we are thinking in the project CESET is to think, okay, can we think about how to build community energy projects that challenge the drivers of exclusion, that work with existing social and material relations, so they don't posit some ideal technology, but they really work with the technologies that exist and that they are available to people, because as you know, a lot of these technologies depend on supply chains. And also with community energy projects that ask the other question. What do I mean by asking the other question? This is a concept from intersectionality theory that says, whenever we recognize a form of discrimination or a form of marginalization, we always have to, and we try to address it, we always have to ask, what is excluded and who is excluded from those actions to address it? So for example, if we think about providing energy access to people living in very remote areas, because that remoteness prevents them to access energy, it's like, who are we excluding when we focus on developing community energy projects that only address the needs of people living in remote areas? So that kind of thinking about the other, people that still get excluded. And what I wanted to give you is some reports from CESET, from our work, which CESET is an action research project. So there's been research on CESET, but a lot of the work on CESET has been oriented towards creating impact and creating action on the ground. So I'm going to talk about some of the initiatives that we had that put gender equality and social inclusion at the core of the project. So the first, and there are these different strategies of thinking about regulation, thinking about infrastructures and materials and embedded social relations, and thinking about community. So first, in terms of thinking about tackling the drivers of discrimination, one of the questions that we've thought is how we can bring gender equality and social inclusion right in the energy sector, across policy and across the structures of thinking that shape how we develop community energy. So taking advantage of the adoption of a new off-grid regulation in Mozambique in 2020, we've been working with different organisms there, particularly SMB and the Brillo program, which is funded by the UK aid, to try to develop additional forms of regulation and implementation that incorporate gender equality and social inclusion at the core of energy policy. So one of our proposals has been the JESI seal, which is a voluntary program for off-grid operators to demonstrate and the actions for gender equality and social inclusion that they already implement. And this was developed by a group of feminist thinkers in Mozambique, based in Maputo, most of them. And we've been most recently working with the Energy Regulatory Authority, ARENE, but we also have the blessing of the Ministry for Energy and Natural Resources to try to see whether this can be implemented with minimum cost to off-grid operators and, of course, to the government. So the implementation of the JESI seal has been delayed because, as you may know, in Mozambique, there was a recent election that is being highly contested and there's a lot of unrest at the moment. But we hope that in the long term, this can constitute a model of regulations that respond to gender equality and social inclusion concerns. But of course, the question here is how we engage in letting processes of governance to actually transform the very paradigms that inform them. And in terms of thinking about the material infrastructures, and we also work with the Chipopoma project, power project that then Harshit and Mulvalem studied more in detail in terms of community resilience. But one of the things that we found there is that a lot of the projects are assembled precariously, and there's a need to kind of get the support as the project develops, get small forms of support that are very situated. And this is one of the lessons of feminist thinking, that situated knowledge, day-to-day knowledge may be crucial in terms of dealing with the challenges. So here is one of the challenges in the Chipopoma project was that the turbine, it was self-designed and it was not appropriate for the system and for the capacity system. And eventually this turbine had to be changed, which it has happened with the support of CESET. The other question is, if we start to think about the material constraints of the energy system and how we challenge them, one of the challenges is that there are not many female engineers that actually that can act as technicians in community energy projects, because for whatever the reason, and we don't know, and we are researching that at the moment, we need to understand why female engineers do not get into the energy transition or the low carbon energy sector. So what we've been trying to do with the help of Mulu Allen and our colleagues in Msusu University, well, not with help, they actually have led it. We've been the ones helping, is training, making training on renewable energy that actually targets the people who can develop those skills, and particularly using targeting female technicians. And finally, the other question is how you build communities that are inclusive. And in this case, for example, one example I would like to tell you about is that a community energy laboratory that we are building in Chamanculo, which really consists of, so this is the neighborhood where we are building it, and one of the challenges is the lack of street lighting. And what we are trying to do is to create a solar system of street lighting and kiosks that provide energy to the communities there. And what I wanted to explain is that as the projects have been developed, there have been challenges with the community, which have been exacerbated by the context of the election and the unrest that has followed. So for example, in this case, which is where they are building one of the kiosks that will provide community services, like for example, printing services, there's a conflict regarding, so let's say the excuse for the conflict is that tree. So people say you cannot build it there because it's that tree, but really what is happening is that the laboratory is being built with a community, in a community that is deeply divided. So what we have to think about is how can we use this project to actually build community, to actually galvanize the community around the community energy project, but while recognizing the differences within the community. So just to conclude, I wanted to say that for me, the framework that we have developed through the CESET project in terms of gender equality and social inclusion is really like we have to think about challenging the drivers of exclusion, but at the same time accept the need to work with existing institutions. How can we create those challenges? Creating agency through relationships that are embedded in social material relations, and also construct provisional communities in a project that really is about creating collective solidarities in an ongoing project that is never finished. And I think resilience comes when all these things come together. So if you want to hear more about this project, here it is.